Cloud breaking up a little bit through this evening, so many places having some sunny spells, and as I say, most places will be dry. But then later in the night, we could well start to see more cloud coming back across eastern parts of England. That will help to keep the temperatures up, but where we've got clear skies over Scotland, northern England, North Wales, certainly a frost in rural areas. Temperatures could be as low as -3 or -4, down to 2 or 3 degrees in most towns and cities. So a chilly start to Thursday, but again, for many western areas, a dry and a bright day. Lots of cloud again over the Midlands and eastern England, and for some here it could stay fairly gloomy all day. Thicker cloud might just bring 1 or 2 scattered showers over northern Scotland at times, but say most places looking dry with some sunshine in the south and west, 16, 17, Cardiff, Southampton, but under the cloudier skies, Hull and Norwich struggling to get much beyond double digits. During Thursday evening, still 1 or 2 showers over northern Scotland, but for most it's dry, and again we'll see the cloud breaking up to reveal clear spells. So again, a touch of frost is possible on Friday morning. And Friday's a similar story, perhaps a bit more cloud over northern and eastern Scotland with 1 or 2 scattered showers, a bit more cloud across southeast England, but for many central and western parts it's dry and fine on Friday with some good spells of sunshine and temperatures responding to that sun. It feels pleasant in the sunshine, with highs in the mid-teens. High pressure continues to dominate into the weekend. Likely to see some showers in the far northwest on Saturday, but still for much of the UK, high pressure will bring fine weather on Saturday.
Tonight on GB News, at 6 it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs & Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and this is Dewbs & Co, the show that's, well, we'll get into everything that's you have been talking about today. One MP, get this, is under investigation for apparently watching porn in the Commons. Sometimes I literally just have to laugh. 56 MPs have been investigated for sexual misconduct. Gotta say though, hang on, because there was a meeting yesterday and it was discussed. Sentences such as male MPs saying, "That's a nice outfit. What do you do for your day job?" And, "Come on, girls." Really? Sexual misconduct? Are we losing our minds? Anyway, we'll be getting into that. That is for sure tonight. Also, Russia. Threats have been ramped up, haven't they, from Putin to the countries that are getting involved. But, as yet, there's no sign of the UK's involvement slowing. What is the end game for this country and at what cost? And 16-year-olds, what do you think to this? Should they be allowed to vote? A new campaign involving the Body Shop, do you remember them? I do. For that reason, anyone old enough will remember that perfume. Dewberry from Body Shop made my life hell while I was at school, so it did. Anyway, I digress because, long story short, the Body Shop is involved in a campaign saying that 16-year-olds in this country should now be allowed the vote. Goodness me. And are you a worshipper of the religion that is the NHS? Support for it is at its lowest level for a quarter of a century. What on earth are we going to do about it? And are we finally now allowed to criticise the holy thing that is the NHS? We'll have all that to come, but first, the latest news headlines.
Good evening, I'm Tamsin Roberts in the GB newsroom. The Chancellor has been cleared of breaching the ministerial code over his family's tax affairs. Boris Johnson's standards advisor also ruled that there was no conflict of interest in Rishi Sunak having held a US green card. Mr Sunak referred himself for investigation after it emerged his wife held non-domiciled tax status, exempting her from paying UK tax on overseas earnings. The Prime Minister has apologised to those who lost loved ones in care homes at the start of the pandemic. It's after the High Court ruled that government policies to discharge patients from hospital to care homes were unlawful. The case was brought forward by two women whose fathers died from COVID-19 in 2020. Boris Johnson says that at the time, the government didn't know that COVID could be transmitted asymptomatically. Russian media says the Kremlin is sanctioning 287 British MPs. The Prime Minister says they should regard it as a badge of honour. The retaliatory move comes ahead of a major speech by the Foreign Secretary, who will urge allies to send tanks and warplanes to Ukraine. Liz Truss will call for tougher economic sanctions to further isolate the country, including cutting off oil and gas imports once and for all. Meanwhile, Russia is being accused of blackmail after Gazprom halted gas supplies to Poland and Bulgaria because both countries are refusing to pay in rubles. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the move will hurt Russia.
The move that Russia did today is basically a move where Russia hurts itself. The Kremlin is hurting the Russian economy because they are cutting off themselves from important revenues.
Labour has accused the Prime Minister of having his head in the sand over the cost of living crisis. In the final Prime Minister's questions before the local government elections, Sir Keir Starmer said Boris Johnson is failing to manage the economy. As the hike in national insurance takes effect, Sir Keir said millions of people will look at their payslip this week and see his fingerprints all over it.
In the real world, our growth is set to be slower than every G20 country except one, Russia. And our inflation is going to be double the rest of the G7. Does he think that denying the facts, staring him in the face, makes things better?
The Prime Minister responded by defending his record.
This is the government, this is the party that supports working people. Unlike them, with the biggest increase. Yes, I'll tell you what's going up. The living wage is going up, Mr. Speaker, by record amounts.
The Chief Whip is investigating claims that a Tory MP has been caught watching porn on his mobile phone in the Commons. It's after several newspapers reported that the allegations were raised during a meeting of Tory MPs. Conservative MP for Mid Derbyshire, Pauline Latham, says the culture within Parliament needs change.
Whatever it is, and I have no idea, although I had heard the story, they should go. They should go, and that will mean their ministerial career is absolutely shot. Their parliamentary career too, probably, because that is totally and utterly, well, it's just not excusable in any way.
5 Metropolitan Police officers will face a disciplinary panel over the stop and search of 2 black Olympic athletes.
Wait, he didn't do anything!
Bianca Williams and Ricardo dos Santos were stopped in West London whilst driving with their baby son. Both were handcuffed and searched, leading to accusations of racial profiling. Releasing a statement, Bianca Williams said a clear focus on the racism problem within the Met is long overdue. Radio presenter Tim Westwood has stepped down from his show on Capital Extra after being accused of sexual misconduct. In allegations made to the BBC and The Guardian, the 64-year-old is accused of misusing his position to take advantage of 7 women in their late teens or early 20s. The DJ, who left BBC Radio 1 and 1 Extra in 2013, strongly rejects all allegations of wrongdoing. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now it's back to Michelle and Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Tamsin. Well, keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight. My panel, we've got Harriet Sargent, the journalist and author, Gareth Sturdy, teacher and education consultant, and former Labour advisor, Scarlett Maguire. And you know the drill on Dewbs & Co by now, don't you? It's not just about us, it is about you at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? What do you make to all the day's goings on? Honestly, sometimes I think I'm living in some fiction clown world or something, some of the stuff that goes on. But what do you think? gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. You can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs or at GBNews. Don't forget, of course, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can see all the best bits or watch us live. When I say best bits, I don't know why I say best bits, because what I should just be saying is you can see all of Dewbs & Co back. That's, of course, all the best bits, isn't it? We've got an app, we're podcasts, radio, we're everywhere. So wherever you are, good evening to you. You're very welcome tonight. And another day and another investigation into allegations of MPs behaving badly. This time, an MP has been accused by a female colleague of watching porn on his phone in the Commons chamber. Another MP has apparently backed up the claims, and today also the Green Party MP Caroline Lucas has highlighted in PMQs that 56 MPs, which by the way is about 8% of them, have been investigated for sexual misconduct.
56 members of this House are under investigation for sexual misconduct, and that includes 3 of his cabinet ministers. The Prime Minister has just rightly said that there can be no place for sexism and misogyny in this House. So can he now confirm whether he considers that sexual harassment, apparently unlike bullying and lying, is grounds for dismissal under the Ministerial Code?
Of course, sexual harassment is intolerable, and it's quite right that members should now have a procedure by which they can bring that to the attention of the House authorities, and I think that's a good thing, and of course it's grounds for dismissal.
Oh, where do we even begin? Scarlett Maguire, I'm sure you've got some thoughts on this one.
Actually, I was completely shocked when it broke about the MP watching porn in the Commons. You just think anybody watching porn at work would be sacked, right? Any job, and here is a man who is watching it in the Commons, thinking that he had a right to do it. So you don't understand why he's so obsessed with porn that he's doing it. You also don't understand why he's so stupid that a place that has cameras, has people looking over it, he does it. So there's that. But actually, there is a whole problem with sexual harassment and bullying in the Commons. And it is partly the entitlement of a lot of the MPs who feel they can get away with things. I mean, you know, David Warburton is being investigated. The Tories have cut him loose, quite rightly. And he said that he's got a lot of defences. I mean, you know, and then I'm afraid the Daily Mail did a story that this was a foreign power intervening because he'd been photoed with
But this isn't a new thing
cocaine.
unique to these collection of MPs. You know, sexual misconduct is something that's gone on for a long time. This is not like a new thing relating to this collection of MPs or this political party,
it's
is it?
the kind of person that's attracted to the House of Commons. I mean, the kind of person is people who love power. I mean, that's fine. That's not a problem. But unfortunately, with some men, it does mainly seem to be with men, that they it sort of spills over into something less pleasant. And I think the key thing with this man was that he was watching porn, sitting next to a woman.
But we don't
and clearly he gets a kick out of making that woman feel uncomfortable. And I think this is true of many incidents.
See, this don't wash with me, and I'd be happy to be proved wrong on this. But I don't think, and maybe I'm going to have to eat my words, and if I'm wrong, I'll eat my words alive on Dewbs & Co tomorrow. But, Gareth, it makes no sense to me, because you're in the House of Commons, there's people all around you, there's cameras everywhere. I just don't believe that someone would be such a moron that they're going to sit there proactively, deliberately watching porn. We live in an age now where I can Google an innocuous term on my phone now and be presented, as I've had happen to me frequently, by the way, on social media, what I would call quite hardcore porn. I've done it loads of times, innocently, looking at whatever research, and it's presented to me. And if you were sitting next to me, you'd be going, well, she's watching whatever. I haven't deliberately sought it out. It's there, it's presented to me, and I wish it hadn't have been. So we're all assuming and presuming guilt before we even know the details.
That's the really interesting thing for me, that we've got two guests here who have immediately assumed that this guy's guilty, that they know what's going on. And indeed, you know, in Harriet's case, you're saying, you're sort of giving us psychological insights into what's going on in this man's mind. You may well be right, but you could equally be wrong. Until the full facts of this have emerged, I think it's very, very premature, but certainly I think it's jumping the gun to say that there is a culture, a toxic culture in Westminster. If you look at some of the allegations that are being made, people saying, come on, girls, people saying, that's a nice dress you're wearing, and so on. If that represents toxic culture, then I think our understanding of what a toxic culture is wrong, not the fact that Westminster is somehow rife with sexism.
Hold on. I mean, those might be bad examples, but there are an awful lot of things that never got anywhere. I mean, I know for a fact somebody who didn't get into the Lords, a Labour person, that Jeremy Corbyn wanted to put into the Lords and was prevented because of the complaints about him, right, by a lot of women and how he made passes at them, as a friend of mine said, I wouldn't let a young woman in a corner with him. I mean, there are a lot of entitled MPs. Harriet is completely right. And that's why there's so much bullying there. It's not just the men.
It's not about sex, and it's not... I mean, I have to say, I mean, I've had, you know, a really happy life as a journalist. I've always had men being incredibly helpful, respectful, all of that. And the only unpleasant instant I have ever had was with an MP. And I remember the look of glee on his face afterwards, and it was that he was making me feel uncomfortable, that he was getting off on being able to do that to me. And that's, I'm afraid, what I think is happening so often in the House of Commons.
But these are all individual, isolated cases, and I don't deny that there are a lot of
cases.
Yes. I don't,
across all the parties too. I
don't deny there are a lot of bad people in the world, or people who just aren't thinking through the consequences of their actions sometimes. I totally get that. But to immediately widen this out and say that this is something about the nature of politicians, it's something about the nature of power, it's a toxic atmosphere, it's a toxic culture, I think that cheapens what's going on in the House of Commons. And what really concerns me is, as we enter this kind of economic crisis, and there's a war going on in which we are seriously involved in supplying arms, while all this is going on, we're talking about, you know, basic instinct, we're talking about people looking at porn, and I just think that's the worst part about it, that Westminster is behaving like a bunch of school kids when there's some really serious stuff going on.
That's what you said it.
Porn is a bunch of...
You said it. They are behaving like a bunch of school kids. That is the problem, right? Somebody told the Mail on Sunday, you know, that Angela Rayner, by crossing her legs, was distracting Boris Johnson.
And it was nonsense, but yet loads of people made hay of it and said, oh, this is a really terrible thing.
Yeah, but
it's a scurrilous given a story...
That's a bad example. I totally agree with you about
well,
that.
also, hey, sir, hey, miss, he was looking at porn. No, I wasn't. And, you know, OK, let's have an investigation.
Women who he was sitting... I mean, what upsets me, and clearly, if they were sitting next to him, they must be in his party. So
Look,
these are not women with a grudge. They're actually saying
not necessarily.
one of their fellow MPs. They were sitting next to him.
Well, also, it came up at a Conservative Party women's meeting, right? I mean, I'm not saying
what party it is.
I'm not saying for it is. I'm not saying for a second that it doesn't happen. The Labour Party, the SNP. Obviously, probably not the Greens, but actually, this it is a cultural problem, and that's why they've had to change the rules to try and make it possible, so that when you complain, you don't complain to your office manager who might be married to your boss, or certainly is that actually you can complain outside, and it's because of that toxic culture, and it's just there are example after example after example.
But also, sorry, if you're watching porn, you're not exactly taking part in the debates about, the war, are you?
Do you know for a fact that this person was watching porn?
Of course we do. And this is the thing. So you talk about culture problems, Scarlett. I think that there's a couple of different cultural problems, actually. Point one is, I think, as a culture, we've lurched into this situation of presuming and assuming guilt. It always used to be innocent until proven guilty. Now, as a society, when it comes to things like this, you can have an allegation made against you. Gareth, you are a fine young man, but I could make an allegation. I'm sitting next to you. I could make an allegation against you quite easily. Sure. And what we tend to do in society now is, on the basis of an allegation, we want to almost destroy people. Before we've even waited for the facts, with cool, calm heads, we want to take their careers from them. We want to, mark their name. We want them out of public kind of life. And I think that is wrong. So that's the first cultural problem, to your point, that I think we've got. The second cultural problem is we treat these MPs like they're some kind of celebrity. They have their kind of radio shows, they go on reality, they go on, I'm a celebrity. Well, you're not a celebrity, thank you very much. You're a paid civil servant to represent your constituency, not to eat kangaroo bits and pieces on television. And I think it's a genuine problem in our culture that we're turning these people into make-believe celebs. They then believe this hype, they think that there's something that they're not, and then around and around we go.
The person at the centre of this was elected by constituents to sit in the House of Commons. If, and that's a big if, it is proved that the allegations currently against whoever this is are correct, then it should be up to those constituents to decide whether that person leaves their job or not. That's how democracy works.
By the way, let's not forget former Home Secretary, was it Jackie Smith? She got into lots of trouble for putting porn films through on expenses.
It was her husband. Yes. Her husband was watching the porn. She claimed
it on her expenses.
That was at home. No, that's right. We paid for it.
And it was wrong. And there was no question. It was wrong. It was her husband who was watching the porn.
Anyway, my point is, this spans all parties. Anyway,
I think Harriet and I completely agree. It spans all parties. What we're talking about, and actually. It's not just about sex. It's about entitlement, and I think that that's where you're absolutely right. And people get elected, and then they think they're special. And there is an addiction in the House of Commons because you go there and you have people working for you. I mean, it's quite incredible. MPs, their egos.
Quite a lot of fever dreams going on here, I think.
I probably know a lot more than you do.
Oh well, thank you very much.
But I do have to stick up for them as well, because, we are talking about, was it 8% or whatever it is that's been investigated. So that means that by far and away, the vast majority of them are not being investigated for sexual misconduct. So, let's be fair to them. It's not all of them that are under this dark cloud at the moment. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, got lots that I want to talk to you about. I want to ask, when it comes to Britain, you might have seen, by the way, Putin, he's upped his game when it comes response to the threats that he's aiming at countries that are getting involved in this whole conflict. So it makes me think about Britain, because indeed we are involved. But to what point? What is our end game? When do we say that's enough when it comes to money we're sending, arms we're sending? Or is it not enough? Do we keep going until the bitter end? I want to talk about the NHS as well. And I want to talk about 16-year-olds. Should they be given the vote in this country? I'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, a must-see interview with a man who's lived his entire life in the fast lane. Formula One Supremo Bernie Ecclestone is all revved up and leading the fight back against the PC war on sports. Will stopping woke drivers from taking the knee be impossible? Should Russian sports stars be banned for Putin's war? And should grid girls make a comeback? It's another world-class guest on a show that never takes a pit stop. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry. Welcome back to Dewbs & Co. Keeping me company until 7 o'clock tonight. Harriet Sargent, who's a journalist and author. Gareth Sturdy, teacher and education consultant, and former Labour advisor, Scarlett Maguire. Lots of contacts coming in. We've just been discussing this whole, Porngate. It is today, It's Porngate today, Partygate yesterday. Did you see Durham Partygate? That was trending on Twitter if you're a Twitter user. It caught my eye. It made me chuckle, but it also made me a little bit depressed, actually, because quite frankly, don't you think our police forces have a lot better things to be doing than investigating tit-for-tat allegations about who was drinking when and where, whether there was pizza involved or beer? Quite frankly, I find the entire thing ridiculous. So, as I always say, I'm not going to go around that Partygate circle until if and when there are some decent developments to discuss. Lots of you agreeing with me, by the way, about innocent until proven guilty. Yes, I'm pleased that some of you are thinking sense like me out there, because we've turned into a nation, haven't we, of the second there's an allegation about anything, whoa, he's guilty, better not sit next to him, better not have him in my company, get him out. Really? That's all well and good, but I wouldn't like the toe to turn, because can you imagine if someone was making allegations about you? You'd want to have a fair investigation before you're assumed to be guilty, wouldn't you? I certainly would. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Downing Street are not going to rule out training Ukrainian pilots or sending British jets to Eastern Europe to backfill for allies who supplied jets to Kiev. As revealed on GBNews today, you might have seen this as well, the UK were also supplying Ukraine with ambulances. Of course, now our package of support, shall we say, to Ukraine totals hundreds of millions of pounds, doesn't it? Russia, in the meantime, has threatened British military advisors in Ukraine. Apparently, Vladimir Putin's foreign ministry spokeswoman has also hinted their focus could turn to targets on British soil. If you've seen the latest, Gareth, that Putin's saying, he's talking about responding in lightning speed. And it gets me thinking, because nobody wants this conflict in Ukraine. Everybody wants it to be brought to an end as quickly as possible. But I actually worry that this isn't going to be as quickly as possible. This is potentially going to be a long, drawn-out conflict. How long should we be in there for? You know, to what end? And by the way, how do we know what the end looks like? What is success when it comes to the UK's involvement?
I mean, I agree. I think it's going to be a long, long campaign, and we should be in it till the bitter end, in my opinion. There's absolutely no way that we can scale back the assistance we're giving. I think we should step it up. And I think there is this sort of dangerous mood in the country, in some places at the moment, of kind of thinking, well, this has gone on long enough. You know, OK, we gave some support, but it's time to pull out. And I think that's really, really dangerous. Not least because the Ukrainians are making some real gains. You know, it's a bit foolish to say that Russia's on the back foot or that Ukraine is winning this war. It's too difficult to say. But definitely, the war is not going the way Russia planned. Everybody knows that. And so I think this is a crucial moment where Putin is going to feel cornered. He's going to feel like it's not going his way, he's not getting his way, and is going to start upping the ante. And we really do need to show Ukraine absolute support at this time. I'm absolutely convinced by that.
Scarlett?
It's quite clear from what Liz Truss is going to say this evening that that for her the end game is Russia losing, and for Russia to lose the war, it means that we've got to be in there. I mean, you know, for all that Russia has not gone to plan. It's lost an awful lot. Russia is not going to lose a war against Ukraine only, and so therefore, when she says Putin must lose or Ukraine must win, it really doesn't matter which. That's what she's saying. And you know, right from the beginning, people have been worried, quite rightly, about whether Putin decides, because we have no idea what he's thinking, to nuke, London, Sheffield, whatever. And I think I don't think we've thought it all through about what it all means, because actually we are talking about a proxy war in Ukraine against NATO, against Europe, against Russia. And whatever happens from now on, it is devastating.
Yeah, Harriet?
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying, and we sit here talking about being nuked. But the problem is very simple, is that Putin is behaving like the bully in the playground, and he's saying, OK, I'm going to take your gas away, I'm going to nuke you, I'm going to do this, that and the other. And the horrific choice we have is actually fight him now, which is bad enough, but not fighting him will be even more devastating and have even more devastating consequences, because a defeat of Ukraine is a defeat of NATO, it's defeat of Western values, and we have to, this is where we draw the line. This is where we have to make a stand and say we have to do this.
Yeah, I don't really buy this whole defeat of Ukraine is a defeat of NATO, because Ukraine are not even in NATO. But I think I'm a lone voice on that, on this panel. So I'm interested in your thoughts at home. What do you think about all of this? Lots of you. The bullies in the playground should be stood up to, says John. Someone else, Peter, has emailed in saying, where do we get all this money from? Sorry, it's Eloise that's written in. The government has got money for war, but they don't seem to have money to help feed the poor at home. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Let me know your thoughts on all of that. But just got a quick update for you, actually, regarding the Duke of York. Here to tell us more is our royal reporter, Cameron Walker. Cameron, good evening to you. What's happening?
Good evening. So we've got some breaking news out of York this evening, and York City Council have voted to remove Prince Andrew's honorary freedom of the city. That was an honour bestowed to him in 1987 as a wedding gift. Now, Buckingham Palace is not saying anything this evening, and neither is the Duke of York's office. We do know back in March, the Duke of York, settled out of court in a civil sex case against him. Virginia Giuffre accused him of sexually assaulting her when she was a teenager. It's an allegation which the Duke of York has always denied. Now, Councillor Darryl Smalley, in a statement tonight from York City Council, says it sends the right message that we, as a city, stand with victims of abuse. He goes on to say the next logical step is now for Prince Andrew to do the right thing and to relinquish his Duke of York title. He then calls on Buckingham Palace and the government to remove it for him if he refuses to do so. Now, obviously, that's an incredibly strong statement, but it's important to say that the Duke of York has always denied all the allegations against him, and there was no liability, Michelle, or admission of guilt in that out-of-court settlement back in March. But we do know he had a friendship with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, but the Queen does not have the power to relinquish the Duke of York title from him. Only an Act of Parliament can do that. So the question tonight, Michelle, is it's up to MPs to decide whether they feel as strongly as York City councillors have tonight. All of this, of course, happening just a month before the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in June. And so I think it's going to be a very uncomfortable night for the Palace.
Cameron, thanks for that update. Let's pick up with you, Scarlett. Your thoughts on this? Is this a big deal to you, this story? Let me even ask you that.
I think we've all been expecting it. We knew that York City Council were going to have a vote on it, and it was pretty obvious that they were going to vote to deny him the freedom of the city. They don't like being associated with him. He hasn't behaved at all well. It's not just York City Council. I mean, the Palace have pushed him to the outside. I think this story that's bound to happen. I don't think he will relinquish his title, and I don't think Parliament will even discuss it. I think some people will say it ought to be, but actually it'll be pushed aside, and then there'll be another row about whether he's on the balcony for the Platinum Jubilee or not. I mean, he's just, he's the uncle nobody wants at the wedding, really.
Gareth?
Yeah, I mean, I think the statement by the council says it all, really. It's sending the right signal. We're standing with victims of abuse. I mean, is there anyone in the country who doesn't stand with victims of abuse? This says more to me about the signalling that councillors want to do than anything else. I just don't think it's anything worth worrying about, to be honest. He's the Duke of York. People will always know him as the Duke of York. And having said that, I don't think anyone thinks that the Duke of York has any kind of close connection with the City of York, and that in some way the City of York is stained by his poor reputation.
Well, I mean, the people living there certainly do, and I think they should have a say. I mean, there's been multiple petitions trying to get him in York, from people in York, saying that they don't want him associated with their city. They say he's not showing Yorkshire values. Having him associated with such a proud, fair and straight-talking county is contradictory and embarrassing. I mean, surely they have some... they should be given some say in this. I don't think I'd like him known as Duke of Paddington, which is where I happen to live.
What are Yorkshire values?
Well, I'm just telling you what the people of York's saying, and that's what they feel. And why shouldn't they feel that?
I'm a Yorkshire person, and I would say that I certainly don't speak for all of Yorkshire. I don't speak for the county as a spokesperson for what the values are, but I guess, I would say if you push me and said, what do you think values are? Decency, honesty, integrity, family values.
I mean, with
those
full
kind of
full
things.
respect to Yorkshire. I mean, those are values that I think
but
everybody holds. But what's more, I just don't think that the City of York is in any way immutably connected with the Duke of York.
They gave him the clothes, Gareth. They gave him the freedom of the city as a wedding present. They're taking it back. And you talked about democracy earlier. This is about democracy. This is, as Harriet says, the people of York have spoken, and through their councillors, they've decided they don't want to have anything to do with him. That's fine. I mean, you know, and I have to say, if he was the Duke of Tufnell Park, I would feel the same.
Crikey, Mikey. Well, they're not messing around on this panel tonight, are they? They don't want to be associated with you, Prince Andrew, if you're watching. If you are watching, though, by the way, Prince Andrew, I feel a bit of your pain, because I was once promised the freedom of the city, the keys of the city in Hull. So I was, many years ago. And do you know what they did? They took it back. It never happened, yes.
What did you do?
Well, I'd love to know, actually. I'm not even joking, by the way. This is a true story. Many years ago, you might know if you're old enough, I actually won The Apprentice, and afterwards, they was going to have this whole ceremony in the City Hall, it's called. They was going to give me freedom of the city, keys to the city, and then they changed their mind.
So perhaps decisions that are made in Yorkshire are not necessarily the voice of the people. Perhaps it's all about internal local politics. I wonder if that could possibly be the case.
There's a lot of petitions. Have you not? They've said there's numerous petitions, so I don't think it's internal politics.
But petitions are not democracy. What MPs decide? Elected MPs should decide on this, and that's democracy.
And elected councillors decided on this, pushed into it by petitions from the people. You can't say that the only people who can ever make a decision is an elected MP. The councillors are elected, the councillors decided, and actually it appears, and I'm not from York, but it appears that they have reflected the views of the people of York correctly.
Well, if you are in York, by the way, tell me what you think, because lots of comments are coming through, but I don't know if any of you are in York. But Kay says, this is all kangaroo court. A bit kangaroo court, that's what she thinks. John says, if anyone thinks that he's so despicable, then surely the government should be disbanded in that mind. Arnold says, I support the Duke of York. He's innocent till proven guilty. So he does. And then this one's really made me laugh from Chris. He says, when you're talking about what Yorkshire values are, Michelle, they're penny pinching. I'm saying nothing, although I've got to say I'm quite tight, so you might be onto something there. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, 16-year-olds. Have you got one? Do you know one? Should they be allowed to vote? What do you think to that? I'll have that and more after the break.
Tonight on The Mark Steyn Show, journalist Peter Hitchens will explain why he thinks people should get real jobs rather than going to university. Doctors are warned they'll be punished for criticising the vaccine online. We'll be asking Dr. Tony Hinton if he'll be following the new rules. Plus, an update from Down Under from Alexandra Marshall. All that and more on The Mark Steyn Show from 8 o'clock.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. Lots of you writing in on the stories we've discussed so far. Prince Andrew, Russia, and also the goings-on in Parliament. I'll be reading out some of your feedback in just a few minutes. But for now, coming up next is Nigel Farage. Nigel, good evening to you. What have you got coming up in your show?
Well, gas. We'll be talking about gas because the price is up by 25% again today as Putin cuts off supply to Poland and indeed to Bulgaria. We'll be debating with Clive Moffat, who is a government advisor on gas supply security, debating what can Europe do because Germany is in a mess. And actually, the truth is, in the economic war over Ukraine, Putin holds the cards. We'll also talk about the building behind me. Extraordinary events. The government losing a battle in court, being told they got it all wrong, sending people out from the NHS into care homes, causing a lot of unnecessary deaths. Rainergate still going on. And now a Tory member of Parliament apparently watching pornography in the chamber on more than one occasion. So we'll talk about all of that with Tom Harwood. And joining me on Talking Pints, Hamish de Bretton-Gordon, who is the country's leading expert on chemical warfare, and we'll talk about the implications of that for Ukraine.
Well, thanks for that. Sounds good. I'll see you at 7, Nigel. Thank you. Lots of you writing in, by the way. Still about Yorkshire values. We've started something here, I can tell you. Paul says, Michelle, you forgot to mention our friendliness. That's one of our values. He says, we at least say how do or good morning to people up in Yorkshire. Yes, you're absolutely right. They really don't do that so much, you know, in London. It's like kind of when I say to people, strangers in London, I'll see you later. When I say bye, they look at me as though I'm some kind of weirdo that's going to try and follow them home and see them later in their own house or something. We have very different greetings up north to down south, I can tell you. Right, let's move on. A campaign led by the British Youth Council and the Body Shop is calling for all young people to be able to vote at the age of 16 by 2024. The launch, of course, comes ahead of local elections on May the 5th, when 16 and 17-year-olds will be allowed to cast their votes in Scotland and Wales, but not in England and Northern Ireland. The campaigners are arguing that nearly a third of the new enrollees in the armed forces are 16 or 17-year-olds. Not sure what that's got to do with the price of fish, but anyway, Harriet, should you be able to vote at 16?
No, I think this is ridiculous. I mean, if I was 16, I'd be much more interested in being able to buy a drink, which you can't do at 16. You can't enter a nightclub at 16. I mean, clearly we've got our priorities all wrong. And I think what we should be doing instead, actually, with 16-year-olds is teaching them, preparing them to vote, which is teaching them about our constitution, how Parliament works, how Select Committee works, and that would be much more to the point than this crazy idea of giving 16-year-olds, which is just a way of, I think, of the left to try and drum up more voters by just making it younger and younger.
Well, Gareth, you are a former teacher. I mean, you must deal with teenage kids all the time. Do you think that they should be voting on the future of the country?
Well, I mean, even my son is going to be 16 later this year, and I mean, I definitely wouldn't let him near a polling booth, you know.
Let him loose with a voting slip.
I mean, you know, there's a certain level of, what do we call it, sort of political maturity, I think, that you know, aspire voters to have when they go into the polling booth, and I just don't think 16-year-olds really have, you know, that kind of grasp on life yet, and why should they, you know, they're 16. But I do think that this is a really bad attempt by people who feel that they just can't, win a political argument on the basis of the points they want to make, and are hoping that if they drag in younger people, teenagers, 16-year-olds, that somehow they're going to vote for those policies, and that's how they're going to get their policies through. And I just think it's a really, really bad idea.
Scarlett, you're going to love it, I can tell.
Well, actually, it was a former Conservative MP who persuaded me that was a good idea, and what she said was that you take it into schools and you get people, because you get the around an election, you get the children sorting out what parties they do, what parties they vote for, all about it, and then you actually get people voting for life. And the big thing is how do you get young people voting? How do you persuade more people to vote?
Because a lot of schools do this. I mean, certainly in the States they do it. They run elections in the school. Doesn't mean they're actually going to vote. No, but it's almost
she felt very, very strongly that if you started in schools and you get young people to vote at school, so you're going to get 16, 17, 18-year-olds to vote in the election, then they're going to go on doing it. And you can and actually, this wasn't a left-wing idea. I mean, the people behind it, it's not about trying to, because God forbid, if you really know young people, they're not that left-wing.
This is a trend that's been going on for years now, which is basically we want to develop something in society, and so we're going to do that by going into schools. And I think the idea is if you sort of grab them when they're young, they're a bit more sort of malleable. Who is going into schools? Who's saying this is why it's important to vote? Who's saying these are the different parties and these are the different policies? All these questions are really, really important. Of course, I totally agree with 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds and younger understanding how the parliamentary system works, politics works in this country, but that's very different to taking a political decision in a polling booth as a full citizen of the country. And children are not in a position to take that decision. Simple as that.
Well, I'm still reeling, Scarlett, from you saying most young people are not left-wing. I think, goodness me, that I can't think of a single young person that I know, and I'm really racking my brains here, that is not what I would say quite ultra left-wing and certainly like ultra kind of work and stuff like that. So you and I must know very different young people. By the way, you at home, what age were you when you first voted? Did you rush out there, aged 18, excited with your piece of paper and your pencil? Or were you slightly later? I didn't vote until I was 30. 3-0, I didn't vote because I wasn't engaged in politics. I live in a city where, I could get that remote control and stick a red rosette on it and it would win the election. So for me, I just felt there was absolutely no point in getting engaged politically at all. So yeah, 30 I was. I mean, all those women that fought hard for my vote, they'd be turning in the graves, wouldn't they, that I didn't bother using it. But
that's not, that is the fault of politics. It's not the fault of you. The job of politicians and people working in politics is to go out there and talk about things that are really important to ordinary people. And sure, it's a sort of it's a duty to vote, maybe. But if you can't find anyone to vote for, that's not your fault.
Yeah, and I guess it wasn't even that I couldn't find anyone to vote for. I think where I was from, and there's a lot of places that are like this, it was almost like there's just no point in voting. What's the point? Because the same people are going to get in and around you go, same old, same old. Shane says he rushed out at 18. Someone else has just emailed in saying, never mind 16. Arnold again says, change the vote to 22. 22, Arnold, that's a bit harsh. Anyway, let's quickly talk, shall we? Move on to the NHS. It's second to bottom in survival rates from cancer, strokes and heart attacks, according to a major new report. The report compares the NHS with nearly 20 other healthcare systems, including the US, Japan and Australia. And across 16 major healthcare outcomes, the UK comes bottom of the league 4 times, more than any other country. No other comparable country has such a poor record. So, I've got to say, Scarlett, all used to be, all hail the NHS, you could never criticise it. I think those days are long gone, don't you?
No, I think many of us have criticised the NHS for a long time because it's underfunded. I mean, I have to say that the report I read did have America as the absolute bottom. But anyway, in Europe, we're certainly the bottom. And I think that we need to be...
Did you say it was underfunded?
Of course it's...
Right,
no, it doesn't. I'm sorry. It says that with the funding we give to the NHS is average.
Yeah, let me press pause, because this gets trotted out all the time. People basically just want to bash the Tories by saying they're not funding the NHS. So let me just be clear. OECD data says in comparison to other wealthy countries, our spending in 2019 at 10.2% of GDP exactly matched the average spending of comparable countries. So for spending, we were average.
So where are we spending it? So what do we do? What do we do? What we keep doing is restructuring the NHS and spending an absolute fortune.
Hang on then, so do you take your comment back then? Because your comment was, this is all about underfunding. I've just shown you that that's not true.
It's actually underfunding in the health bit. I mean, it is incredible.
I'm sorry, it's not underfunded. And it is a ridiculous... I mean, I spent about 9 months in about 6 different NHS hospitals shadowing staff and actually seeing what was going on, what was happening to patients. And it's an appalling organisation that we have sort of covered with this magic, that we can't... It's our religion and we're not allowed to say anything against it. And actually, we should be looking at it very clearly and very hard and finding out what we should do about it.
Well, did you just say it's an appalling organisation?
Yeah, it is appalling.
No,
it is appalling.
It is
I think
appalling.
I was being actually rather nice about it.
So today we just learn that when the pandemic started, when this huge crisis in health came upon us, what did the NHS do? But with the most vulnerable people, it said, well, you've got to go back to the nursing homes. We can't have you in the hospitals. It doesn't even care effectively for the people it should be caring for.
Because that's, I mean, to be clear, what we're talking about here, we're talking about discharge back into care homes. That's obviously been proven now to be perhaps the wrong decision. But
it was a political decision.
But not a lot of knowledge was known about COVID at that point in time.
Well,
about
right, what about the midwife
transition
crisis? I mean, there's so many. I mean, it's kind of...
No, I guess.
I mean, what about all these poor mothers and babies that have been killed for no reason?
Just wait, there are certainly things that go wrong, but to call it an appalling organisation... So I was seeing an oncologist on Monday and I complained that I had a 2-hour wait, and she said, like everybody else, I wasn't being particularly special, and she said, look, we have patients in until 6. I never go home until 8 o'clock at night. And she was absolutely wonderful. I mean, I have spent far too long this year in hospital, and they are really, on the ground, they're great. And the problem is why are the cancer rates so low? Why is everything so bad? And that's what we should be looking at.
Well, I actually did spend about 9 months looking at this, and the problem is bad management. And the fact that it's managers spend all their time working out what the centre wants, what government wants them to be doing, rather than... I mean, I very rarely found a manager who'd actually knew what was going on in his hospital or her hospital. And that, I think, is a fundamental problem.
I don't think anybody thinks that people working in the NHS, at the front line, as it's called, nurses and doctors and all those people in the wards... I don't think anyone's criticising them by saying that the organisation that they...
I think some are not very good, some are wonderful, but that again is the problem of having poor management.
The organisation
there's some that are not good at all because they're not properly managed, and no one is saying, get up, go and give that poor old lady a glass to drink, or go and offer her a bedpan or whatever, and they're just not doing it.
The sign for me that the NHS is held up as some sort of supernatural thing is that even as we go into this cost of living crisis, when people cannot afford to, heat their homes, feed themselves, feed their children, all of that, we still have to sacrifice earnings to give it to the NHS, because apparently it still doesn't have enough money. And that just seems obscene. And I don't actually see how that line is going to be held, because people are facing such a crisis that the idea of giving away their money as a boost in funds to the NHS, I can't see how the people
buy that. Lots of viewer response coming in. I mean, lots of viewer response. John just sums it up in one word. He says the problem with the NHS in one word, in capitals, he puts it, managers. the sentiment is coming through thick and fast on the emails, certainly, that it is the kind of structure and the management. And I guess when you say the NHS is appalling, part of me, I criticise the NHS often. I think it's not fit for purpose at the moment as an entity. I personally wouldn't give it a penny more funding until I'd done a massive root and branch reorganisation, review, restructure. We all live longer. We don't always look after ourselves, do we? So the pressure that we put on the NHS is monumental at the moment. But I do feel like I need to stand up for, your average nurses, doctors, etc. Not least because my mum and sister are both NHS nurses, and I see how hard they work. And sometimes when you say about giving people a glass of water and a bedpan, often the wards are so understaffed that the nurses would love to sit and give bedpans and waters and all the rest of it, but they're pulled left, right and centre. So I think root and branch reform, that's what I certainly would call for. That is all we've got time for tonight, though. Could have continued for a long time because there's so much more that we could get into tonight. But for now, Scarlett, Gareth, Harriet, thank you very much for your company. Thank you as well at home for your company. Always enjoy our conversations, so have a great night and I'll see you tomorrow. And by the way, Elle Parker, don't know your full name, but you've just emailed in saying, Michelle, you never read my views. Well, guess what, Elle Parker? I just did. You've got fame at last. Have yourself a fantastic evening and I will see you at 6 o'clock tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office. Dry and bright again for most tomorrow. It will be a bit of a chilly start once more with temperatures tonight under clear skies again getting down close to and a touch below freezing in some places. High pressure continues to bring the dry, fine weather, but the winds coming around the high pressure just feeding in more cloud again across eastern areas, so that cloud thickening up somewhat overnight. That increasing cloud will help to stop temperatures falling too far, but for parts of northern England, southern Scotland, North Wales, we are going to see a frost, certainly in rural areas. Temperatures in towns and cities generally holding up a little bit above freezing, but even through the central belt of Scotland, we could see frost even in urban areas here. So a chilly start to Thursday, but generally another sunny start. Quite a lot of cloud across these eastern parts of England once more, and the small chance of the odd shower across Lincolnshire and Norfolk. And through the day, the risk of 1 or 2 showers across the far north of Scotland. But for most, it's dry and bright. Some good spells of sunshine for South Wales, southern England. 16, 17, say, in Southampton, 14 in Belfast. Much cooler again in the east, particularly where it stays cloudy through parts of Yorkshire and East Anglia. We'll see that cloud perhaps breaking up a little bit more during the afternoon into the evening. Still a few showers through the night across northern Scotland, but for most it'll be clear again, and again a hint of frost on Friday morning. Again, it's a similar day, dry and bright with plenty of sunny spells across the west, always more cloud across parts of eastern England. Maybe 1 or 2 more scattered showers on Friday over eastern and southeastern parts of Scotland. But for most it's dry, and you get the sunshine, it feels pretty pleasant with temperatures in